Alrighty. Hey, everybody. Welcome to wasmCloud Wednesday for Wednesday, July 30th. I guess we're about a month into our quarter 3 roadmap. So I didn't actually put it on the agenda for today, but we'll do a quick check-in on some of the items there. Have a couple updates that should be fun. Um, and here, let me just share the agenda for real, for real. So, woo, July 30th. I've got pretty fun demo. I was going to demo it last week, but I broke something right before. So instead, we got to talk about pipelines and see Bailey's awesome setup wash action and all that. But I'm going to show an OAuth plugin in Wash. And then I want to talk a little bit about the migration path for contributing that into the Wasm Cloud organization. We got a couple maintainers here. I just want to see if there's any, opinions or thoughts or what have you. And then, hey, there's not really a discussion needed, but look at that. We passed the 2000 star mark. Yay, vanity metric. It's still cool to just see that number kind of tick up consistently on the homepage. So, um, congrats, everybody. It's pretty fun to see the progress of just that going in the upwards direction. So I guess we're messing with the agenda order, but okay. Wash OAuth plugin. So it's no secret, actually, two weeks ago, I demoed the latest version of the Wasm Shell, which is kind of a reimagining, a rewrite of Wash from the ground up, built to be a Wasm component development tool and to have Wasm components integrated throughout the lifecycle of the Wasm Cloud shell, like the lifecycle of the CLI. So we talked a little bit about like maybe a simple hook. Right before your dev session starts up, you can have a before hook that launches your observability stack. And we also talked about commands, which are top level plugin subcommands or, one level nested commands that look like they're actually just a part of the Wasm shell. So, I mean, hey, it kind of is like that. I wanted to show I'm going to show it from the guise of somebody who is wanting to try out a plugin for the first time. They haven't installed it yet, but they downloaded the WebAssembly component and they want to test it out. Now, the purpose of this plugin is to be able to authenticate with any OAuth or OIDC server. So, it's a pretty common flow for authenticating with applications, is to, or authorizing, whatever, authenticating with applications is to go through an OAuth flow. And in Wash, an OAuth login thing isn't really the responsibility of this tool, right? Like that's not the kind of thing that we want to force to a top level command, and then we have to maintain it and yada, yada, yada. So I went ahead and wrote a plugin. I just called it OAuth. I pushed it up to the Wash repository. I'll go ahead and inspect it. Yeah, we'll inspect it. If we look at the plugins OAuth build, you can see that this component uses WASI logging and config runtime to look some things up. It makes outgoing HTTP calls. It accesses the file system. And then you can see it imports and exports the Wasm Cloud Wash plugin interface. So it can run as a plugin, but also it exports WASI HTTP, which is pretty interesting, but a new capability that we've introduced into the plugin model system. So if I wanted to see what this plugin was all about, I can, and I'm going to do cargo run. I think everything is installed latest on my machine, but never hurts. Cargo run plugin test with this plugin. And then I'm just going to run help. You can also do dash dash help. This will proxy down to it. But okay, here's some of the information about this command. So there is a single subcommand called run, which actually runs the command. So if I ran run or run help, if I ran run, at least, it'll say, hey, you need to supply your client ID and your client secret for this component. Okay, reasonable, sure. I actually have it exported in this other in my other terminal, so I'm just going to use that. So I'm going to run this OAuth plugin. And when it runs, we get a single log that says, hey, waiting for authentication. And this is basically just going to sit here. You can see we've opened up this HTTP port at localhost 8888. If I open that up, I can authorize my CLI plugin to, or I can authorize this app. I hit authorize, and boom, there's my access token. Don't steal it. I'll expire it. I don't even know if this is a secret. Probably a good thing to figure out before you stream, but whatever. If I go back to my command line, you can see that I've authenticated myself and stored credentials under a specific access token file. Now, if I run this again, it's actually going to be able to look up that file, immediately, and look up my credentials. So, how did this work? When you actually run this plugin inside of Wash, it's going to first of all execute essentially the main function of this plugin, which is only responsible for basically printing out a log and then waiting for this credentials file to exist. And in the background, we actually instantiate another instance of this component that's waiting for the HTTP request at /login. And then once you go through that flow, at the very end of it, we'll store your credentials as a part of that file. So just to talk through the code maybe a little bit more, because I think folks may find this interesting. I actually did this plugin in TinyGo, and the main reason is because this HTTP router is just so nice. This is supported within well, I guess two reasons. HTTP in and out in TinyGo is really nice. So you see I support 3 different endpoints. / is just the information, and then /login, and then the callback URL. Now inside of main, we'll do main first. This is where my configuration of the plugin happens. So I have info, initialize, run, and hook, and then my client ID and client secret config here. But here's the one function that you need to implement for every Wash plugin is the info. So you hand back this like structured piece of information about, hey, here are all the command line flags that I'm expecting to be able to use. And nice enough, I can actually use the environment variables from the host on like a allow only basis so that I can run this demo and not show you my client ID and secret, which is really nice. And then the top level command that you can run, which is run. Now, inside of this run, essentially what I do is I pull the command line arguments that I got from the top level CLI here. So I get client ID and client secret and port. And then I set this plugin config. I don't actually, I use this a little bit later, but you have this like shared plugin context that you can use across like each instance of the component. So I set the client ID and client secret specifically. And then I do some work with WASI logging and WASI clocks and do a little exponential backoff checking the contents of the credentials file. So I'm essentially waiting for this to, yeah, LOL sob. Essentially waiting for this file to exist. Now, I don't get to choose where this file comes from. I have to use, this is a component. I have to use the WASI file system pre-opens API. There might be a way to just do this with like normal Go APIs. I didn't try, to be honest. But essentially I get the directory that the host has allowed me to write to. And then as soon as I can read it, I returned, okay, we did it right. Inside of OAuth, this is one of my favorite like pieces of component code that I've been able to get working. I used it in a demo at KubeCon last time, sometime last year. But essentially, I can just reuse the like Go OAuth library with a WASI implemented HTTP server to implement the whole like login auth callback piece. So I form the OAuth configuration by grabbing the client ID and client secret from the other instance of this plugin, which has already been parsed, which is pretty fun. And then login callback. This is like straight up copy pasted from an example that I found online for like Go OAuth stuff. So I didn't have to do too much, but once I actually get the token, the user info JSON, I'll do the same thing with WASI logging to write to the contents of that like auth token to the directory where I'm allowed to write to. This directory, and I have a little more detail on this on an upcoming blog post about Wash plugins and their security. This directory is under the XDG data directory. So it's supposed to be something that's persisted between runs, which I think is most appropriate for plugins having their own little file system. But under the Wash plugin directory, there's an FS, another FS. Sure, it's file system. Naming is hard. And under this, every component gets its own little scratch. You can write everything to this directory. You can do whatever you want. Doesn't matter. But every plugin is only allowed to access their own directory. Now, there's a bit of a precedent where, thanks, Taylor. Good to see you. Um, there's a bit of a precedent, maybe an idea that you could have plugins ask other plugins for some contents in their store. But we're not there yet. I'm just trying to stick everything essentially um, in its own little box. So really when it comes to the security model of plugins, there are some things that we allow, like incoming and outgoing HTTP requests. You can have your own file system. You just only get this one specific directory to play in. So, you're not able to access anything else outside of that. And we can really lean into the security model of components and WebAssembly for that. So I thought that this OAuth plugin would be a really good example to try and stretch the plugin system. Like if I can execute a command that's fully parsed by clap, available on the top level CLI, and then I can do like this full OAuth round trip, store some creds, and then ideally, what would be really cool is I could take these credentials, this token that I've pulled down, and then use it in a different area, like maybe I authenticate with a registry, and then right before pushing to an OCI registry, I could actually look up that token and then use that as a credential to push to somewhere that I've already like logged into. Trying to just basically pump out a couple of really neat examples on the plugin side to make sure that we have it fully fleshed. But yeah, I was pretty happy to see this fully working. It felt really cool to do with components. And it's a good example of a TinyGo component, since my knee jerk is just to write everything in Rust. So yeah, I'll go ahead and drop this like the link to the plugin if anybody wants to take a look. Um, but yeah, that's it for the demo. Does anybody have questions or want me to poke a little bit more into different pieces of this plugin or how it works, or happy to talk through like how we're running those different instances too. All righty. This is all up and open source now. I just sent the link in the chat, but I'm going to show the link to the repo here in a second for our next discussion item, anyways. All right. Well, we can go ahead and move on then. Let me find in the thing. So, I talked about this a little bit when I introduced Wash in the community call a couple weeks ago. I know that it's confusing. There's Wash and then there's Wash, but really, it's all Wash. It's all the same project. I'm sorry, I can't help it. The The thing is that we this is really just a oh hey, don't look at my dot files. This is really just an evolution of the current Wasm Cloud shell. I do like calling it the Wasm shell because we've actually yanked out all of the other than the plugin like wit interface, which like whatever, we'll just call them Wasm plugin. We've yanked out all the wasmCloud specific bits. It is a general command line tool for developing components. And then we're going to enhance that with some wasmCloud plugins like, wash wasmCloud deploy, what have you. The world is your oyster when there's a full plugin model. So, the current version of Wash, I'm sorry, I might be missing the chat. Dumb. Um, the washed version of Wash. The existing version of Wash is here in our Wasm Cloud repository, and most recently, one of the biggest changes that went into it was consolidating Wash lib and Wash CLI into this one crate, and then just releasing it under the single name, which is awesome. It's great to have this. There are a lot of things in the Wasm shell that cover experiences from, excuse me, there are a lot of things in the Wasm shell that cover the same developer experience as Wash today. So there's, the structure of having an output kind for text or JSON to be able to set your log level, and then a command. This is all going to look really, really similar. Building components, pushing and pulling components, creating new templates, all of that, the hot reload loop, all of that is the same. But it doesn't cover everything. In fact, there's a whole lot in Wash. Oh my God. There's a whole lot in the new Wash that is not present. Sorry, there's a whole lot in the old Wash that's not present in the new Wash. It's intentional. Some of these subcommands like generating in keys, generating claims tokens, which we kind of do automatically in the background for build, create or deploying WADM manifests. These are the things that are Wasm Cloud specific, and we hope are good targets to be plugins to the Wasm Cloud, to the Wash. We really need a different name. This is all my fault. Things that should be plugins. So I don't think that in its current iteration, as cool as it is, as nice as I feel the developer loop is and the plugin system, it's not ready to replace what is Wash today. So what I'd like to propose is that we take where did this go? I was just working here. I'd like to take the current repository, not this one, but that's a good blast to the past. Uh, I'd like to take this repository and release Wash as version 1.0. Now this isn't exactly the a reason to take a project to 1.0. But, really, we haven't had many breaking changes to Wash in quite a while. And it is pretty well solidified as the tool, the Wash tool that goes with Wasm Cloud 1.0, right? And there's nothing changing about Wasm Cloud right now. But what I'd like to propose, and I threw this out in Slack, I just wanted to give everybody a chance to have this feedback. I'm going to put up a PR to move Wash to version 1.0. That will essentially solidify its place as, V1 of Wash. And then we can start bringing in the Wasm Shell version of Wash and, compare the features. We can do a diff to talk about like how do you migrate from one version to the next. And essentially you can pick to install the newest version if it covers all of your needs. What's also really nice about this is if we have a major bump, from 1.0 to 2.0, that's something that in the different package managers, Homebrew, apt, I think that's all that we support RPM, whatever, that'll actually be an obvious flag that you're jumping from major version to major version. So I don't have a strict timeline on when I'd like to have the new wash be the wash, but I'd like to go ahead and bump and release wash as 1.0 and then migrate, and then which we can do a little bit later. But then I'd like to push wash into either the wasmCloud contrib repo or as a separate crate in the mono repo so that we can iterate on it there. I have one more thing that I'll share on that, but Masood, you put your hand up. Go for it.
Two questions. For the existing one, once basically released as version 1, are you planning to put a, let's say, a feature freeze on that? That's question 1. And question 2 is that given that plugins are using component model, can you think of any features in the existing WASH that aren't currently supported by the component model? Something that requires native, native binary privileges.
Yeah, it's a great question. I I know that the Wasm Shell piece is a passion project and an attempt to address the pluginify wash RFC that we've agreed that we want to do. I don't want this. I don't want it to be something where we have to like merge everything in and replace the old one. Once we get to if we were to push out a 1.0 for wash, though, I would like to hold off on any, especially any backwards incompatible breaking changes, but anything that's not like, patching a bug or fixing something that's been that's an issue. I think it would be better if we're all working off of the same base as the CLI. So, yeah, I mean, personally, I I wouldn't I'm not going to be taking on any like big features in Wash as it stands today, just because I'd like to either address that in the latest version or to be working off of the same base once we merge that together. Does that answer your question, Mr.? Do you have any concerns or suggestions on that?
No, actually, personally, I'm supportive of that. It's more like if we keep continue adding features to the existing one, kind of making it harder to migrate because it becomes a moving target, right? But then the second question, which is related, really related to this, also is that would we have a feature that we can't really, at the moment at least, fit into the component model that plugins are using?
Yeah, I think that there are a couple commands that may not, that might not um, be able to come over really cleanly. The developer loop, for example, is something that is complicated enough. Like you need to spin up a WebAssembly runtime and then, handle things on it. I think that is certainly a concern. Um, the when I think of some of the other commands that we have in Wash right now, the things that would be hard, um, any interaction with NATs, especially NATs Jetstream, is probably going to be more difficult well, certainly going to be more difficult in a plugin versus as a native command. And it's not because components don't well, okay, I guess it's kind of because components don't support it, but like the plugin model right now doesn't give you a wasmCloud messaging implementation that you could back with, that we could implement with NATs. If we, and that's totally in scope. If we can do that, then you can implement the wash app subcommands, using NATs messaging. You can implement all of the control interface operations as well, spy, capture. Um, yes, Bailey. Yes, that's right. Um, there's not something that's an intentional exclusion is the building and management of provider archives in WASH. That is a wasmCloud specific ism. I don't see why a component couldn't, um, you know, hardball something that seems like a reasonable level of support, like write out some bytes. Um, but just like Bailey said, we do actually allow for components to well, we allow them to request through WASH to exec binaries that are running on the host system. This is something that like requires a confirmation dialog every time, like from the user interactively. So, we could have plugins that send a message using the NAT CLI. For example, as a stopgap. That was a lot of me talking. I
So
guess,
but sorry, in a sense, I'm saying that this is a good use case to identify the limitations of the current plugin model and say that, if we use this as a real world example of where they're going to be stretched to their limits, what else we need to have in the plugin model in order to make it really, you know, effective in all sorts of scenarios.
yeah, I think I'm gonna add that into the blog post. I think I'm not trying to have everything be perfect immediately, of course, but taking the plugins or taking the commands that don't exist anymore and then evaluating them like viability to be a plugin, that would definitely help us identify like that would absolutely help us identify if the plugin model is sufficient for now. A great suggestion, Masood. Thank you. Yeah, to your other point and maybe Bailey's suggestion, I once Wash is over on the Wasm Cloud side, I would definitely like to call for a feature freeze on the Wash CLI. That's just to avoid the moving target. I'll probably call for that. It'll probably end up being next week or so once everything is in and shakes out. But that'll just avoid probably two things. It'll avoid people contributing features that don't end up being used because they were contributed in a different version, and it makes it a little easier for us to just like only stick wash updates to be ideally patch versions that resolve bugs, things like that. I have one more. Oh, yeah. So, if you were thinking, no, there's going to be a feature freeze on Wash, but I really wanted to contribute to the project, what could I do? Well, fun news. So I went through a little bit of a polish pass on Wash last week. So this was something that I did just to kind of wrap up some of the plugin model pieces. And everywhere that we had like everywhere that I had places for myself to come back and like check out a little piece of code or fix something, I categorized it with to-dos. And so I resolved a good couple of those, like any good engineer. But I actually annotated a lot of different to-dos that I didn't feel like I needed to fix immediately with this to-do GFI. Hopefully it doesn't stand for anything heinous, but I was doing it as good first issue. What I would really love to do is if folks are interested in contributing to like this pretty new project, interested in picking up some good first issues. There are a lot of good opportunities in the Wash CLI as it is today, or the new Wash CLI for people to contribute to like a brand new project. So, feature freeze does not mean, we don't have a place for contributors to plug in. These are really good things like, hey, it would be great if we had a for the wash configuration, it'd be great to have a command for validating it. Like, how do I know my config is valid? Like, corresponds to an actual like set of keys in the wash config. Um, all of these will translate over to to-dos with the like, you know, the uh, uh, the issue number. This is something that there are some plugins that will actually link you out to the issue. But, for example, I have one issue on the Wash repository around extended overrides for interface pulling. Um, get that additional work. Oh yeah, okay. Yeah. Bailey called this out. But yes, I think all of these to do good first issues will get turned into essentially an issue on a wasmCloud repository that anybody is welcome to take, which is I think really cool. There's a lot of fun opportunities to contribute on this. So, I'd love to get as many people working on it and eyes on it as possible. So yeah. I think that's probably all on the wash side today, but everybody can keep an eye out for, I'll throw up a PR whenever it's ready to show we're bringing that in. Um, for the last little bit of the call, which we have plenty of time if anybody has anything they wanted to chat about afterwards. But one thing I wanted to just do is a quick roadmap check-in since we're maybe about a month in, and see where we're at. So on the Wasm Cloud roadmap, actually, I brought over this RFC for pluginifying Wash, since it's something that I'm working on right now. This is in progress. We can probably call the RFC complete once it's in the wasmCloud org. But we'll continue working on the wasmCloud shell after that. The other feature that we have started spiking on, so it's not quite a good candidate for anybody to come and take at this time. I've been working with Luke Ark on this transitioning capability provider model into wRPC server, wRPC endpoint, name kind of pending. But this idea that if you if Wasm Cloud is able to communicate with something over wRPC, that's how our invocations get from component to component, component to provider, then essentially if they're able to communicate with each other, then that endpoint, that server is a capability provider. It implements an interface that's being used by components or can call components. So this one is a little bit more open-ended, which is why I'm trying to pair with another longer term maintainer on it. But the idea here is that if we could get Wasm Cloud out of the habit of, or out of the responsibility of spawning native binaries and into the responsibility of essentially doing if you can tell the Wasm Cloud host, here's where you can find, here's the NATS connection information, here's the prefix to communicate on, here's the workload identity, whatever. If it can communicate with some other process running on NATS somewhere else, that provider that implements a capability for the whole lattice can be a binary. It could be running in a container. It could be running as a like side process or embedded in another system. It both makes it a lot simpler on the Wasm Cloud side. We don't have to manage running processes anymore. We just manage running components and then communicating via wRPC. It also means that we don't have to like I don't know. I guess with our providers, we would still publish them as this like multi-architecture binary, but not having to make developers care about that anymore too. Like, you can just run a container, run a binary on your own architecture, would be really nice. So keep an eye out for this one. As soon as we have some, I think we're shooting to have some kind of proof of concept WIT discovery algorithm um, next week. It may not be next week in the community meeting, but probably either next week or 2 weeks from now. Would love to show off what we come up with here and then get feedback from folks. If anybody has ooh, if anybody has thoughts, things that you would suggest, other inspirations to take a look at, um, then please feel free to leave some comments on that issue. One of the reasons why Luke, I'm sorry, I'm just like sharing and unsharing. One of the reasons Luke and I decided to start taking a look at this one is Luke actually had a PR that went in, well, that's in the wasmCloud repo for this idea of virtual components, which is basically this wRPC endpoint idea. It allows you to communicate with some other service that speaks wRPC that's connected to NATS. So I think this is really good inspiration. Luke is actually running this version of wasmCloud in production now, and it's working well for him. So I really wanted him to take some of those learnings and you know be able to work on this proposal. When I say that I'm working on it with him, we spoke yesterday, and he's doing all the work. So definitely kudos to him, and Luke, if you're watching. Um, so you could launch cross-platform providers using the execution engine of NATS. You could do anything. Um, yeah, Masood.
So, I have previously said that I'm totally on board with this, but it seems to be having the same kind of issues that we discussed about plugins. For example, if for a component to be a capability provider, it needs to be able to have long-running processes, right? Or having additional access that today, and we can say that we can mix and match for those sort of scenarios, but I'm just saying, particularly when it comes to long-running processes, that's something that is not, as far as I know, in the existing component model to play the role of a capability provider.
Yeah, you're totally right. I think that it's possible for us to maybe do something with components where we run them and then have them serve a specific endpoint or whatever facilitated by the host. um but I think I maybe misspoke when with the virtual components proposal. That's essentially what Luke called them, like a virtual component running somewhere else. But in running components as capability providers is not in scope for this specific issue. This is purely the getting the host out of responsible, stopping the host from running capability providers, which of course will, support all the way through a 2.0, and, support them talking to an external wRPC service. So what I see as good candidates for the MVP of this wRPC server is a standalone binary that knows how to connect to NATS. It's been configured to do so. A container, running in Kubernetes or, Docker Compose or something that's connected to NATS. And then an embedded process in some other um, you know, long running container or library that can connect. Does that help alleviate some of the fear there, Masood? Just to know that components aren't in scope.
Yep, yep. Yeah.
But you're totally right. We've had this dream for a long time that we could do this long running stateful kind of multi-threaded component as a capability provider. I think WASI P3 will help us realize that a little bit more formally, and the inclusion of the maturation of WASI TLS that'll let us have secure connections. So it's definitely in the future, but for now, looking essentially to just break that piece out. Yes. So just to wrap up, maybe the sorry, Bailey, I saw your note. Yeah, async reentrancy of component models much needed. Yeah, async. So we'll have to do like a P3 deep dive someday on this call. Yeah, just wrapping up, maybe looking at the roadmap. We've got a couple other issues in here that we are, that are in triage, but we're essentially working through now. But the in-process component to component calls is something that I have started spiking on, along with Roman, to be able to enable this. Actually, this is in the wash CLI. It's how components call other components inside of the developer iteration loop. So this is something that has been nominally implemented in terms of the wasmCloud runtime. But doing this in terms of a wasmCloud deployment is a little bit more complicated because when you have in-process calls, you kind of sidestep the Nats routing logic, and so there's a little bit more teasing out of how to integrate that. But this has, I guess, I can put this one as in progress because it's essentially been started. But this is something that, well, working with resources can be hard, but works and it's pretty cool. Maybe I could do another demo of the blob store file system component when we come to talk about this one a little bit more. And then on the other pieces, they haven't started yet. But I'm pretty happy if we started three of the what 3, 5, 9. If we started three of the nine, I mean, maybe it's just quick maths, but that seems to be on a good track for 3-month quarter, right? Now we just have to finish them, I guess. So, I think things are going pretty well. If folks, especially maintainers, I know this roadmap is a little bit more geared to the longer term stuff. If folks are really looking to get on and contribute some things, I would love to pull a bunch of those good first issues out of Wash and stick them up here on the roadmap since they're really relevant right now. And if any maintainers are looking for something a little bit meatier to take on, I could try and help do some knowledge sharing on some of the other issues that are in the research column. Whew, wild stuff. Anybody have any questions or thoughts on the roadmap piece? All right, quiet, quiet group on this Wednesday. Well, I think we can go ahead and call it then. But yeah, overall, I think really exciting stuff happening right now. We just kind of need to get it organized and merge it all in so that we're all working off of the same place again. And really, quite honestly, I think we're making good moves on some of the longer standing issues that we've wanted to address in wasmCloud. And so, hey, I'm all excited. It's great to see everybody. I really appreciate you all coming. Yeah, so I think that's it. Well, thanks all. We will see you next week for our regularly scheduled Wasm Cloud Wednesday. But for now, just have a Wasm Cloud day.